I'm Stella Drake, 32 years old. I survived bombs in Afghanistan, but I almost died right in the living room of my $1 million Chicago penthouse. That night, my blood soaked through my husband Ryan's white Italian leather sofa. I had just lost my first daughter, Emma. I should have been receiving a transfusion at the hospital, but Ryan forced me to discharge early because he didn't like the smell of antiseptic. As I hemorrhaged on his precious chair, my mother-in-law, Victoria, didn't call 911. She pinned my shoulders down, her nails digging into my flesh, while Ryan screamed, "You ruined my sofa on purpose. You're jealous of your sister-in-law, so you killed your own child, didn't you?" A kick from Ryan to my ribs ended it all. They threw me out onto the street in the middle of an October blizzard with bleeding bare feet. They thought I would die. But they were wrong. Before I tell you how a tiny USB drive turned their lavish wedding into a funeral for their reputation, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe right now, because the justice in this story will satisfy you to the very end. The nightmare didn't start on the sofa. It started 3 hours earlier, under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the Jesse Brown VA Medical Center. My doctor, Dr. Martinez, had a grip on my wrist that was desperate, almost pleading. "Stella, your blood pressure is dangerously unstable. You've just gone through a traumatic stillbirth. You need to stay for observation for at least 24 hours. I wanted to stay. My body felt like it had been hollowed out with a rusty spoon. But standing in the doorway was Ryan. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at his Rolex, tapping his foot in that agitated rhythm that always meant I was costing him money or time. "Doctor, she's a soldier," Ryan cut in, his voice smooth but laced with venom. "She's tough. Besides, the smell in here is making me nauseous, and we have the gala tomorrow. She rests better at home." "This isn't about rest, Mr. Drake. It's about internal bleeding," Martinez argued. Ryan's eyes finally snapped to mine. They were cold, devoid of the grief a father should feel. "Stella, sign the AMA papers. Let's go. Stop making a scene." AMA. Against medical advice. I signed. Not because I agreed, but because after 3 years of marriage, obedience was a reflex, drilled into me deeper than any basic training. I thought getting home to our sanctuary in the Gold Coast would make the pain stop. I was so stupid. The ride home was silent. When the elevator doors opened directly into our penthouse, I didn't even make it to the bedroom. My legs just gave out. I collapsed onto the pristine, custom-made white Italian leather sofa that Ryan had flown in from Milan last month. It cost $10,000. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe through the cramping in my abdomen. Then, I felt it. A gush of warmth spreading beneath me. Wet. Heavy. I gasped, trying to sit up, but the room spun. When I looked down, the white leather wasn't white anymore. A dark crimson stain was blooming rapidly beneath my thighs, soaking into the stitching. "Ryan," I croaked. "Help." Ryan walked in from the kitchen with a glass of scotch. He stopped dead. He didn't look at my pale face. He didn't look at my trembling hands. He looked at the upholstery. The glass shattered on the floor. "Are you kidding me?" he roared, his face twisting into something demonic. "Get up! Get the hell up! You're ruining the grain." "I'm bleeding," I whispered, the room tilting. "You're doing this on purpose." He grabbed my arm, yanking me up so violently that fresh agony tore through my midsection. He didn't check my pulse. He grabbed a throw blanket and started frantically scrubbing the leather, cursing about stain remover and replacement costs. That was when the doorbell rang. I hoped it was paramedics. Maybe the doorman had seen something. But when the door opened, it was Victoria, my mother-in-law. She swept in wearing a fur coat that cost more than my parents' house, smelling of Chanel No. 5 in judgment. She saw the blood. She saw her son on his knees scrubbing the couch. And she saw me, clutching my stomach, leaning against the wall for support. "She did it, Mother," Ryan spat, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She came home and bled all over the new Milan piece. She didn't even try to go to the bathroom." Victoria didn't gasp. She walked over to me, her eyes like chips of flint. "You always were sloppy, Stella, just like your background." "I need a hospital," I managed to say. Victoria laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. You need a psychiatrist. Ryan told me how you looked at Amanda's baby bump last week. You're jealous. You couldn't handle that Amanda is giving the family a healthy heir, so you got rid of yours, didn't you? And now you're punishing Ryan by destroying his home. No, I sobbed, the accusation hitting harder than a physical blow. I loved her. I loved Emma. Don't say that name, Ryan screamed. He lunged at me. I expected a slap, but he used his foot. The toe of his dress shoe connected solidly with my lower ribs. The crack was audible. I crumpled to the floor, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Get her out, Victoria commanded, checking her manicure for scratches. Before she bleeds on the rug, too. Ryan reached into my purse on the counter. He took my wallet. He took my phone. He tossed a crumpled piece of paper at me, divorce papers he'd clearly had drawn up weeks ago. You leave with what you came with, Ryan hissed. He grabbed me by the back of my sweatshirt, dragging me toward the elevator like a bag of trash. Nothing. The lobby was warm, golden, and safe. Marcus, the doorman, was standing at his podium. Marcus, who I had brought coffee to every morning for 2 years. He saw me, barefoot, clutching my side, blood staining the back of my gray sweatpants. Marcus, please, I begged, reaching a hand out. Call 911. Ryan stood behind me, slipping a $100 bill into Marcus's breast pocket. She's having a psychotic break, Marcus. We're handling it. Don't let her back in. Marcus looked at the money, then he looked at the floor. He walked over to the automatic doors and held them open. You need to leave, ma'am. The wind off Lake Michigan hit me like a physical wall. It was October in Chicago. A premature blizzard was howling through the concrete canyons. The snow wasn't soft. It was ice pellets, stinging my face. I stumbled onto the sidewalk. The heavy glass doors of the building hissed shut behind me, sealing off the warmth, the light, and the husband who had just left me to die. I walked. I don't know why. Maybe it was the soldier in me refusing to just lay down and freeze, one foot in front of the other. The pavement was ice cold, biting into my bare soles. Within a block, I couldn't feel my toes. Within 2 blocks, the trail of red drops behind me was being covered by fresh snow. I made it 4 blocks before my vision went white. I fell to my knees near a street lamp, the cold seeping into my bones, numbing the pain in my ribs. I thought about Emma. At least I'll be with her soon, I thought. I closed my eyes, ready to let go. Then, a screech of brakes. A beat-up yellow cab swerved to the curb, tires crunching on the slush. The passenger door flew open. An older man, small and weathered, scrambled out. He wasn't wearing a uniform, just a thick, worn wool sweater. He saw the blood on the snow. He saw my bare feet. Oh my God, he whispered, his accent thick, maybe Vietnamese. He didn't ask for a fare. He didn't ask if I was crazy. He stripped off his own jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders. It smelled of stale tobacco and warmth. Miss, you get in. I take you. You safe now. As the cab pulled away, leaving the bloody snow and the Gold Coast behind, I looked back one last time. I didn't die that night. But Stella Drake, the obedient wife, did. The woman who woke up in that cab was someone else entirely, and she was going to burn their world to the ground. I woke up to the smell of old paper and lavender. It was a scent that should have been comforting. It was the smell of my childhood bedroom in my parents' small house in the suburbs of Naperville. The walls were still painted that soft, teenage shade of purple I had picked out when I was 15, back before I knew what sand, gunpowder, and blood smelled like. But waking up didn't feel like relief. It felt like the return of pain. My ribs throbbed in a rhythm with my heartbeat. Every breath was a shallow, jagged reminder of Ryan's dress shoe connecting with my side. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the hollowness in my womb. My hands instinctively went to my stomach, seeking a curve that was no longer there, seeking a heartbeat that had stopped beating. I lay there for a long time, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling, listening to the hushed, frantic whispers coming from the kitchen. It's declined, Martha. The whole thing. Declined. That was my father's voice. He sounded older than I remembered, his voice thick with a frustration that bordered on panic. I went to the grocery store to get Stella some soup. The card didn't work. I called the bank. He froze it. Ryan froze the joint accounts. He's claiming suspicious activity because I'm an unauthorized user on the family plan. He can't do that, my mother wept. She's his wife. He has the lawyers, Martha. He has the money. We have nothing. I closed my eyes, hot tears leaking out. Even from 20 miles away in his penthouse, Ryan was still controlling the air in this room. He was suffocating us. People always ask, "Why did you stay?" You were a soldier. You were a sergeant in the army. You handled insurgents. How could you let a man in a suit break you? It didn't happen overnight. It happened in inches. I let my mind drift back, dangerous as it was. I remembered the dinner parties, the way Ryan would squeeze my shoulder just a little too hard when I laughed. He would lean in, his breath smelling of expensive scotch, and whisper, "Tone it down, Stella. You're laughing like a man. Look at my brother's wife. Look how soft she is. Try to be more domestic." He chipped away at me. He took the discipline I learned in the military and twisted it, turning it into a defect. If I organized the house, I was obsessive. If I left a book out, I was sloppy. And if I ever fought back, if I ever raised my voice to defend myself, he would pull out his favorite weapon. "You're having an episode, Stella." That was his ace in the hole. He weaponized my service against me. He convinced me that my anger wasn't righteous indignation at his cruelty. He convinced me it was my PTSD. He told me I was broken. He told me I was hallucinating his abuse. "Go take your pills, honey," he would say, loud enough for guests to hear, casting a look of long-suffering pity at our friends. "She's having a flashback. The war, you know." And I believed him. I started to believe that I was the monster, that I was the one who was hard to love, that I was lucky he put up with a damaged woman like me. I pushed the covers off. My body felt heavy, like I was moving through water. I needed to face my parents. I walked out into the kitchen, holding my side. My mom looked up from the table. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Dad was gripping a coffee mug so hard his knuckles were white. "Stella," Mom breathed, rushing over to help me sit. "You shouldn't be up." "Where is she?" I asked. My voice sounded like gravel. "Where is Emma? I need to know where her body is. I need to arrange a funeral." The silence in the kitchen was deafening. It was louder than the bombs in Kandahar. My father looked away, staring out the window at the gray, snowy street. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. "Mom," I whispered. He handled it, honey," Mom said, her voice trembling. "What do you mean, handled it?" "Ryan. He called us this morning," Dad said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "He said that in your delicate mental state, a funeral would be too triggering. He said you were a danger to yourself." My blood ran cold. "Where is my daughter?" "He had her cremated, Stella," Dad choked out. "This morning, private service, no guests." The world tilted. He had stolen her. He had stolen the only thing I had left. He had burned my child to ash without letting me hold her, without letting me say goodbye, all under the guise of protecting me from my own insanity. It wasn't protection. It was erasure. He wanted to erase the evidence that she ever existed, just like he was trying to erase me. I didn't scream. I think I had run out of screams. I stood up, ignoring the protest of my battered ribs, and walked into the bathroom. I locked the door. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. Her face was gaunt, gray. There was a yellowing bruise blossoming on her jawline. Her hair was matted. She looked like the victim Ryan said she was. "Is this it?" I asked the reflection. "Is this how Stella Drake ends? A cautionary tale? A crazy ex-wife who lost everything?" My eyes dropped to my left hand. The diamond ring on my finger glittered under the harsh bathroom light. It was a 3-carat rock that Ryan loved to show off at parties. "Look how much I love her," the ring said to the world. But on my finger, it felt like a shackle. It felt heavy. It felt like a lie. I remembered the girl who went to boot camp. I remembered the woman who carried a wounded private 2 miles to a medevac chopper while taking fire. Ryan had buried that woman under layers of gaslighting and manipulation. But she wasn't dead. She was just sleeping. I gripped the ring. My knuckles turned white. It was tight, stuck on my finger like a parasite. I pulled. It hurt. It scraped over the knuckle, taking a layer of skin with it. With a final tug, it popped off. I held it over the small plastic trash can next to the toilet. This ring could pay off my parents' mortgage. It could buy a new car. It was worth more than I had made in 3 years in the army. But it was blood money. I dropped it. It hit the bottom of the empty bin with a hollow clunk. I know I'm not the only one. I know there are people listening to this right now who have been told they are crazy for reacting to disrespect. If you have ever felt small because of someone else's words, or if you are fighting to find yourself again, please hit the like button right now. Leave a yes in the comments so I know I'm not alone in this fight. Your interaction is my strength. I looked back at the mirror. The woman looking back was still bruised. She was still grieving. But her eyes? The eyes were different. The fog was lifting. You are a soldier, I whispered to the glass, my voice steady for the first time in years. You didn't die in Kandahar. You didn't die on that white sofa. And you sure as hell won't die in this bathroom. I unlocked the door. The war had just begun. 14 months. That's how long it takes for the cells in your body to regenerate, or so I'd read in one of the medical journals I shelved at the library. Technically, I was a completely new person than the woman who had bled out on a white leather sofa. My life was quiet now. I liked quiet. I worked at the public branch on Fifth Avenue, organizing the nonfiction section. The smell of old paper and dust was safer than the scent of expensive cologne and ozone that used to permeate my life with Ryan. I lived in a studio apartment above a bakery. It was small. My entire living space could fit inside Ryan's master closet. But it was mine. I paid the rent with my own money. No joint accounts, no freezing assets, just me. I still went to my VA support group every Thursday night. We sat in a circle on metal folding chairs, drinking bad coffee. We talked about loud noises, about the dreams that woke us up sweating, and about the civilians who didn't understand that the war doesn't end just because you're back on U.S. soil. I was healing, but I was brittle. Like a bone that had set slightly crooked. It was a Sunday morning in late October, crisp and bright. The kind of Chicago autumn day that tricks you into thinking winter isn't waiting around the corner to punch you in the teeth. I was at the farmer's market in Lincoln Square, trying to buy a jar of artisanal honey for my tea. The jar was on the top shelf of the vendor's stall. I reached for it with my right arm. Bad move. A sharp, hot spike of pain shot through my shoulder. The lingering souvenir of a rotator cuff injury from my second tour, aggravated by the night Ryan had kicked me. My arm seized. My fingers went numb. The glass jar tipped, wobbling precariously on the edge of the shelf. I gasped, bracing for the crash. For the sticky mess. For the vendor to yell at me the way Ryan used to yell when I was clumsy. But the crash never came. A hand, large, calloused, and dusted with fine sawdust, shot out and caught the jar mid-air. Got it, a deep voice rumbled. I turned around, clutching my throbbing shoulder. Standing there was a mountain of a man. He was wearing a red and black flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that looked like they were carved out of oak. He had a scruffy beard and eyes the color of warm amber. He didn't look at me with pity. He didn't look at the scar on my chin, or the way I was guarding my side. He just looked at me. That's the good stuff, he said, handing me the honey. Wildflower. Worth the reach, but maybe not worth the rotator cuff, huh? I blinked, surprised. You know about rotator cuffs? He smiled and the skin around his eyes crinkled. I'm a carpenter. I work with my hands. I know what it looks like when a joint locks up. I'm Lucas. Stella, I said, taking the jar. My hand brushed his. His skin was rough, like sandpaper, but his touch was incredibly gentle. Nice to meet you, Stella. If you need help carrying that to your car, I'm headed that way. I've got a truck full of lumber that isn't going to unload itself. I usually said no, I usually ran away from men who offered help because help usually came with a price tag. But something about Lucas, maybe it was the sawdust, maybe it was the lack of pretense, made me nod. A week later, I found myself standing in front of his workshop. I had dragged my mother's old oak dining chair out of storage. One of the legs had snapped years ago, and Mom had been threatening to throw it out. I told her I knew a guy. Lucas's workshop smelled like cedar and beeswax. It was a chaotic symphony of tools, wood shavings, and half-finished furniture. He was standing at a workbench, running his hand over a piece of walnut that looked like it had been split down the middle. "You brought the patient," he said, not looking up, sensing my presence. I set the chair down. "It's probably trash. The leg is snapped clean through. My ex-husband would have used it for firewood." Lucas walked over. He knelt, inspecting the break. He didn't frown. He didn't sigh about the work. He ran his thumb over the jagged wood with a reverence that made my breath hitch. "It's not trash, Stella," he said softly. "It's white oak, probably 70 years old. You see this grain? It took decades to grow this strong." "But it's broken," I said, the word feeling heavy in my mouth. "It's damaged goods." Lucas looked up at me then, his gaze intense. In Japan, they have this art form called kintsugi. When a piece of pottery breaks, they don't hide the cracks. They fill them with gold. They believe the break is part of the object's history, not something to disguise. He stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. Wood is the same. Wood has memory. This break? It's just part of its story. I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to use a butterfly key, a piece of contrasting wood, to hold it together. It'll be stronger at the break than it was before. And it'll be more beautiful because you'll see the scar. I stood there, surrounded by the smell of sawdust, and felt tears prick my eyes. For 3 years, I had lived with a man who worshipped perfection. Ryan treated objects and people as disposable. If a shirt had a loose thread, it was trash. If a wife had a trauma response, she was defective. If a sofa had a stain, it was ruined. Ryan tried to scrub away mistakes, and when he couldn't, he threw them away. But here was Lucas, a man with dirt under his fingernails, telling me that the broken parts were the most valuable. He spent the rest of the afternoon fixing that chair. He didn't rush. He measured twice, cut once. He sanded the wood until it was smooth as silk. I watched his hands, strong, capable, patient. They were hands that built things, not hands that destroyed them. "Why are you spending so much time on this?" I asked as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the workshop floor. "It's just an old chair." Lucas looked at me, blowing a puff of dust off the newly repaired leg. The butterfly key he had inserted was a dark walnut, standing out proudly against the pale oak. It looked like a badge of honor. "Because it deserves to be whole again," he said simply. He wasn't talking about the chair anymore. And as I looked at him, standing there in the golden hour light, I realized I wasn't looking at a carpenter. I was looking at the first thing in my life that felt real since I took off my uniform. Ryan had thrown me out because I was broken. Lucas was showing me that I could be rebuilt. And for the first time in a long time, the ice around my heart began to crack. Not from damage, but from the warmth of letting someone in. The plastic stick fell from my trembling fingers and hit the bathroom tile with a sharp clatter. 2 pink lines. In the movies, this is the moment the music swells. The woman gasps, tears of joy fill her eyes, and she runs to tell her partner. They spin around in a sun-drenched kitchen, planning nurseries and college funds. But for me, staring at that positive pregnancy test felt like staring down the barrel of a loaded gun. My knees gave out. I didn't fall gracefully. I crumbled, sliding down the wall until I hit the cold floor. I pulled my knees to my chest, curling into the tightest ball possible, trying to make myself disappear. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but it wasn't excitement. It was terror. Pure, unadulterated, black hole terror. Because the last time I saw 2 pink lines, it ended in blood on a white sofa. The silence of the bathroom was suddenly filled with noise. It wasn't the hum of the ventilation fan. It was his voice, Ryan's voice, echoing from the corners of my memory. loud and clear as if he were standing right next to the towel rack. "You're too hard, Stella. Your body is too stressed. You can't keep a baby alive. You're a coffin, not a cradle." I clapped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. "Stop it," I whispered. "Stop it. Stop it." But the voice got louder. "You killed Emma. You'll kill this one too. You're broken goods." I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a tactical vest. I was hyperventilating, the room spinning, the white tiles merging into the white snow of that night in Chicago. I was back there. I was bleeding. I was dying. Then the door handle turned. "Stella, you in there? I brought takeout from that Thai place you like." Lucas. He pushed the door open. He was still in his work clothes, flannel sleeves rolled up, boots dusty. He saw me curled on the floor, shaking, clutching my head. He didn't ask a stupid question like, "Are you okay?" He didn't freeze. He dropped the food bag on the vanity and was on the floor with me in a second. He didn't try to pull me up. He sat down right there on the bath mat, crossing his long legs, lowering himself into my chaos. "Stella," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. "Look at me. Breathe." I shook my head, pointing a shaking finger at the test on the floor. I can't do it again, Lucas. I'm going to kill it." Ryan said I couldn't. Lucas looked at the test. Then he looked back at me, his amber eyes fierce. He took my face in his large, rough hands, forcing me to look at him. "Ryan is a liar," Lucas said. He enunciated every word, leaving no room for doubt. "Ryan is a sad, small man who wanted to control you. Listen to me. You are the strongest woman I've ever met. You survived a war. You survived him. You are not a coffin, Stella. You are a sanctuary." "But what if," I sobbed, finally letting the fear spill out, "what if my body fails again?" Lucas pulled me into his chest. He smelled of cedar and rain. "Then I will catch you. We will catch you. We are a team, Stella. You aren't doing this alone this time. You hear me? We are a team." The next 9 months were a revelation. My pregnancy with Emma had been a performance. Ryan had paraded me around at galas, dressing my bump in designer gowns that were too tight, constantly monitoring my weight, forbidding me from eating carbs because nobody wants a fat trophy wife. My pregnancy with Lucas was quiet. It was safe. There were no galas. There were nights on the couch in our small apartment, eating pickles straight from the jar while watching bad reality TV. When my ankles swelled up to the size of grapefruits in the 3rd trimester, Lucas didn't make a face. He didn't tell me to hide them. Every night, after a long day at the workshop, he would sit at the end of the couch with a bottle of lotion. He would massage my feet for 20 minutes, his strong thumbs working out the aches, never complaining. "You're making a person in there," he would say when I apologized for being useless. "That's harder work than building a cabinet." And the reading. That was the best part. Ryan used to play Mozart because he wanted a genius. Lucas read what he loved. I would lie in bed, my belly looking like a beach ball, and listen to Lucas reading aloud from woodworking manuals or military history books. "Okay, little guy," Lucas would read, his hand resting gently on my stomach, feeling the kicks. "This is a dovetail joint. It's the strongest joint in carpentry because it resists being pulled apart. That's like your mom and me. Tensile strength." He read The Art of War. He read The Lord of the Rings. He spoke to the baby like it was already his best friend. He wasn't afraid of the baby. He wasn't afraid of me. But as my due date approached, the shadow returned. The fear of the end. The fear of the silence. When my water broke, I didn't panic, but I went cold. The drive to the hospital was a blur. The labor was long. 14 hours of contractions that felt like they were tearing me apart. By the time I was ready to push, I was exhausted. The heart monitor was beeping a steady rhythm, but in my head, I was waiting for it to stop. I was waiting for the tragedy. "One more big push, Stella. The head is crowning," the doctor urged. "I can't," I screamed, gripping Lucas's hand so hard I thought I'd break his fingers. "I can't do it." "Yes, you can," Lucas whispered right in my ear, wiping sweat from my forehead. "You're a soldier. Bring him home, Stella. Bring him home. I squeezed my eyes shut and pushed with everything I had left. I pushed past the pain, past the fear, past the memory of the white sofa and the snow. And then, relief. A sudden emptiness. And silence. For 2 seconds, the room was silent. My heart stopped. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for the devastation. It happened again. I knew it. Then a sound cut through the air, a squawk, a gurgle. And then a loud, angry, beautiful wail. "It's a boy," the nurse announced. They placed him on my chest. He was slippery, red, and screaming his lungs out. He was warm. He was heavy. He was alive. I touched his tiny, wet head. I counted his fingers. 10. I counted his toes. 10. Lucas was crying. I had never seen him cry before. He kissed my temple, then he kissed the baby's head. "We did it," he choked out. "He's here." We named him Noah. In Hebrew, it means rest or comfort. But for me, looking at his scrunched-up face, he meant victory. I looked down at my body, this body that had been beaten, kicked, starved, and insulted. This body that Ryan said was broken. It had just performed a miracle. I wasn't damaged goods. I was a mother. And for the first time in my life, the ghost of Ryan Drake didn't have a damn thing to say. 15 months later, that silence would be broken, but not by me. And certainly not in the way Ryan expected. The leaves in Riverside Park were turning that burning shade of orange that always signaled the end of October in Chicago. It was a Tuesday afternoon, crisp and golden, the kind of day that made you forget, just for a moment, that the city would soon be buried under gray slush. I was pushing Noah in his stroller, though he was currently protesting the confinement. At 15 months old, Noah was a force of nature. He had Lucas's warm amber eyes and my stubborn chin. And he had recently discovered the sheer joy of walking, or rather, wobbling with intense determination. Okay, you win," I laughed, unbuckling the straps. "But you hold Mommy's hand. No chasing squirrels." Noah squealed, his little boots hitting the pavement. He grabbed my finger with his sticky hand, and my heart did that little flip it always did. This simple act of walking in the park without fear was something the old Stella, the one bleeding on the white sofa, couldn't have imagined. We turned a corner near the old stone bridge, heading toward the playground. But the path was blocked. A photography crew had taken over the walkway. There were silver reflectors bouncing the sunlight, an assistant holding a boom mic, and a photographer shouting directions like he was shooting for Vogue. "Chin up! Laugh! Like you just heard the funniest joke in the world. Yes! Stunning!" I stopped, intending to turn around and find another route. I didn't want to disturb someone's moment. But then the couple in the center of the frame turned. The air left my lungs. It was Ryan. He was wearing a navy bespoke suit that I knew cost more than my car. His hair was gelled to perfection, his teeth bleached to a blinding white. Clinging to his arm was Amanda. She looked young, painfully young. She was wearing a white silk dress that fluttered in the wind, her blonde hair arranged in perfect, loose waves. They were shooting engagement photos. I froze. My fight-or-flight instinct, honed in the desert and sharpened in a penthouse, screamed at me to run. But my feet were lead. Ryan looked up. He looked past the photographer, past the reflectors, and his eyes locked onto mine. For a second, the mask slipped. The billionaire fiancé smile vanished, replaced by genuine, unadulterated shock. He scanned me. I knew what he was looking for. He expected to see a broken woman. He expected to see me overweight, tired, wearing thrift store clothes, punished by the universe for losing him. Instead, he saw me in fitted dark denim and a camel cashmere coat. He saw my hair, cut into a sharp, chic bob. He saw a woman who wasn't just surviving, but thriving. And then, he saw Noah. Noah, who was pointing at a duck and giggling, looking like a cherub in his little navy pea coat. Ryan's face didn't soften. It tightened. His eyes narrowed, calculating, processing, assuming. "Okay, beautiful. Let's get a solo shot of the bride by the water," the photographer yelled. Amanda squealed, "Oh, perfect," and trotted off toward the riverbank with the assistant. Ryan didn't follow her. He stepped over the cord of a lighting rig and walked straight toward me. I scooped Noah up instantly, holding him against my chest. He smelled like baby shampoo and milk, the scent of innocence. Ryan smelled like ozone and expensive aggression. "Stella," he said. He didn't say hello. He said my name like it was an accusation. "You look expensive." "Move, Ryan," I said, my voice steady. "We're leaving." He didn't move. He stepped closer, invading my personal space, looming over me the way he used to when he wanted to remind me who paid the bills. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I didn't flinch. He looked at Noah. He leaned in, staring at my son's face with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "He's staring right at me," Ryan murmured. "Look at that focus. Look at that brow." "He's a baby, Ryan. Stop staring." Ryan looked up at me, a twisted smirk playing on his lips. He looked smart, sharp, not like some dull-eyed laborer's kid. My stomach turned. He is Lucas's son, and he is smarter than you will ever be. Ryan let out a short, barking laugh. "Please, I've seen your carpenter. The guy smells like sawdust and poverty. You expect me to believe that he produced this?" He gestured vaguely at Noah. "This kid has poise. He has Gold Coast genes, Stella." My genes. The delusion was breathtaking. It was classic Ryan. He couldn't conceive of a world where something good didn't belong to him. He couldn't imagine that a man who worked with his hands could create something beautiful. "You're delusional," I spat, stepping back. "We have nothing to do with you." Ryan's eyes went dark. The charm was gone completely now. "Did you lie to me?" he hissed, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Did you fake that miscarriage? Did you steal my son and hide him away just to spite me? Because that's exactly the kind of petty, vindictive thing you'd do." "I bled out on your couch, Ryan," I hissed, keeping my voice low so Noah wouldn't be scared. "You kicked me while I was losing my child. Do not rewrite history." "I kicked a hysterical woman who was ruining my property," he countered smoothly, as if reciting a fact. "But this..." He looked at Noah again, a hunger in his eyes that terrified me. It wasn't love, it was the look of a man seeing a trophy he forgot to claim. "I can give him the world, private schools, Ivy League. What can the carpenter give him? Splinters? He gives him a father," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Something you don't know how to be." "Ryan, babe, come get in the shot." Amanda called from the riverbank, waving happily, oblivious to the fact that her fiancé was currently undressing my life with his eyes. Ryan didn't break eye contact with me. "This isn't over, Stella. I don't like other people playing with my toys." He turned on his heel and walked back to his perfect, fake life, slipping his arm around Amanda's waist and flashing that $1,000,000 smile for the camera. I turned and walked. Fast! I didn't stop until we were 4 blocks away, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Noah patted my cheek, sensing my distress. "Mama?" "It's okay, baby," I whispered, kissing his soft hair. "Mama's got you." But the peace was shattered. The monster wasn't under the bed. He was in the park. That night, I put Noah down in his crib. I checked the window lock 3 times. I sat in the living room with the lights off, waiting for Lucas to get home from a late install. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up the dark room with a harsh, blue glow. It was a number I didn't have saved, but I knew who it was. My fingers trembled as I slid the screen open. I know the truth. I did the math. He looks just like me. "I'm going to get my son back, Stella. You don't have the money or the pedigree to fight me. Enjoy him while you can. He belongs in the penthouse, not the gutter." I stared at the words until they blurred. Ryan was coming for us. He didn't want Noah because he loved him. He wanted him because he thought he owned him. I gripped the phone. The old Stella would have deleted the message and cried. The new Stella took a screenshot. "Come and try," I thought. "You have no idea what you just started." They say a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. In the Gold Coast of Chicago, lies didn't just travel, they flew first class. Within 24 hours of our encounter in the park, my phone became a grenade I was afraid to touch. It started with a barrage of texts from people I hadn't spoken to since the divorce. Fair weather friends who had sided with the money. Stella, is it true? Do you really have Ryan's son? I heard you hid the pregnancy because of your PTSD. That's kidnapping, you know. Ryan is devastated. How could you be so cruel? Ryan was working overtime. He wasn't just telling people I had a child. He was crafting a narrative where he was the grieving, alienated father and I was the unstable, war-damaged ex-wife who had stolen his heir out of spite. He was painting himself as the victim of a grand conspiracy, and the scary part was, people were buying it. He had the charm, the suit, and the tears on command. Then came the incident on Lakeshore Drive. 2 nights after the park, Ryan was arrested. He wrapped his Porsche around a light pole at 2:03 am. His blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit. In a normal world, a DUI would be a mark of shame. It would be evidence of a spiral. But Ryan Drake didn't live in a normal world. He lived in a spin cycle. According to the tabloids and the grapevine, Ryan didn't crash because he was a drunk. No, he crashed because he was distraught. I saw the interview Amanda gave to a local gossip blog. She stood outside the police station where she had just bailed him out, looking tearful and supportive. Ryan is going through a lot, she told the reporters, clutching his arm protectively. He just found out he has a son he never knew about. He's grieving the time he lost. He drank to numb the pain of a father's broken heart. Please, give us privacy as we fight to bring his boy home. I threw my phone across the sofa. He's a genius, I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. He turned a DUI into a sympathy tour. Now he's not a criminal, he's a martyr. Lucas was in the kitchen, aggressively chopping vegetables for dinner. The knife hit the cutting board with a little more force than necessary. He's a snake, Stella, and snakes eventually eat their own tails. But before the snake ate itself, it was trying to swallow us. The next morning, the legal assault began. I was at the library, shelving books in the biography section, when a man in a cheap suit walked in. He didn't look like a patron. He looked like trouble. He scanned the room, spotted me, and walked over with a smarmy grin. Stella Drake? It's Stella Miller now, I said, my stomach dropping. You've been served. He shoved a thick manila envelope into my hands and walked away before I could breathe. I opened it right there in the aisle. It was a petition for a court-ordered DNA test, a paternity suit. Ryan was suing for emergency custody pending the results. The language in the document was brutal. It claimed I was mentally unfit, historically unstable, and living in substandard conditions that endangered the child. I went straight to Lucas's workshop. When he read the papers, his face went dark. The veins in his neck bulged. He crumpled the paper in his fist, the sound of tearing paper echoing in the quiet shop. I'm going to kill him, Lucas growled, grabbing his truck keys. I'm going to drive down there and rearrange his perfect teeth. No! I blocked the doorway. My heart was racing, but my head was clear. That's exactly what he wants, Lucas. He wants you to lose your temper. He wants a police report saying you're violent. If you hit him, we lose Noah. We have to do this the right way. We use the law. The law, Lucas shouted, slamming his hand against the doorframe. The law costs money, Stella. Ryan has millions. We have a checking account and a prayer. He can bleed us dry in court fees before we even get to a judge. He was right. We were bringing a knife to a nuclear war. I felt the walls closing in. The lies, the money, the lawyers, it was a tsunami. And we were standing on the shore with nothing but sandcastles. That evening, I was sitting on the floor of our living room, surrounded by bank statements, trying to figure out how we could afford a defense attorney. The phone rang. It was a landline number, local. Hello? Is this Stella? The voice was raspy, elderly, and whispered. Yes. Who is this? It's Mrs. Rodriguez from the penthouse, apartment 4B. My breath hitched. Mrs. Rodriguez was the elderly widow who lived down the hall from Ryan and me. She kept to herself, mostly watching her telenovelas and spying on the hallway through her peephole. Mrs. Rodriguez, is everything okay? No, honey, nothing is okay over here, she whispered. That girl, the new one, Amanda. She came to my door yesterday. She was crying. She asked me if I knew why you really left. She asked if you were crazy. What did you tell her? I tried to tell her the truth. I tried to tell her you were a good girl. But Ryan, he came out into the hall. He grabbed her arm so hard, Stella. He dragged her back inside. He looked at me and told me to mind my own business, or he'd buy my unit and evict me. I gripped the phone. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Rodriguez. Don't be sorry for me. Be sorry for him, the old woman said, her voice suddenly hardening. I watched him kick you out that night, Stella. I saw you bleeding, and I saw Marcus just stand there. I know, I said, tears pricking my eyes. It's his word against mine. No, it isn't. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end. My son, Alejandro. You remember him? He works in security systems. After that night, when the police didn't come, I made him go into the building's server room. He told me the tapes get deleted every 48 hours, but I made him copy it. The hallway camera. The lobby camera. Everything. The room stopped spinning. You have the tape? I kept it in my safe box. I thought maybe one day you would need it, or the police would come asking. But nobody came. I was scared of Ryan. But seeing that girl yesterday, seeing the fear in her eyes, I can't let him do it again. I sent a package to your parents' address on file. It should be there today. Mrs. Rodriguez, I choked out, unable to speak. Burn him down, Chica, for all of us. The line went dead. I drove to my parents' house faster than I should have. The package was there, sitting on the porch, a small padded yellow envelope. I sat in my car and tore it open. Inside was a single black USB drive. It looked so small, just a piece of plastic and metal. But as I held it in my palm, it felt heavy. It weighed as much as my grief. It weighed as much as every lie Ryan had ever told. This wasn't just evidence. This was the end of the narrative he had spent 3 years building. He thought he was fighting a war of words. He didn't know I had just been handed a nuclear bomb. I know how it feels to have your character assassinated by someone you once trusted. It makes you feel helpless, doesn't it? If you are rooting for Stella to finally get the justice she deserves, please hit the like button right now. And in the comments type, justice, if you are ready to see the truth come out. Let's show Ryan he picked the wrong fight. I closed my fist around the USB drive. The cold plastic bit into my skin. Lucas, I whispered to the empty car. Call the lawyer. We're not just going to defend ourselves. We're going on the offense. The small black USB drive sat on our kitchen table like a coiled snake. Lucas and I stared at it for a long time before either of us moved. The house was quiet. Noah was down for his nap, blissfully unaware that his mother was about to open a portal to hell. Are you sure you want to watch this? Lucas asked, his hand hovering over my laptop. We can just give it to the lawyers. You don't have to relive it. I need to see it, I said, my voice steady. I need to know exactly what Amanda is going to see. I plugged it in. A window popped up. One file, lobby cam OCT12.mp4. I clicked play. The video was grainy and black and white, stamped with the date and time, 10:43 p.m. But the image was terrifyingly clear. I saw the elevator doors open. I saw a woman, me, but broken, stumbling out, clutching her side. I saw the dark stains on her sweatpants. Then, I saw Ryan. He was dragging me by the arm, his face twisted in a snarl that the silent footage made even more grotesque. Then came the moment that made Lucas turn away and punch the wall. On the screen, I fell to my knees. Ryan didn't help me up. He kicked me. It was a sharp, vicious motion, right into the ribs I was holding. Then Victoria stepped into the frame, pointing a manicured finger at my face, her mouth moving in a silent scream. Finally, Marcus the doorman held the door open, and they shoved me out into the blinding white static of the blizzard. I watched myself crawl away. I didn't cry. Tears were for victims. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a prosecutor building a case. He told everyone I was having a psychotic break, I whispered, pulling the drive out. He told them I ran away. This proves he threw me out like garbage. But a video alone wasn't enough. Ryan could claim it was doctored. He could claim self-defense. I needed a witness, and I knew exactly who to target. The email from Amanda had come through my encrypted personal account that morning. It wasn't friendly. It was professional, curt, and desperate. Subject: discrepancies. Ms. Drake or Miller, I'm auditing the household accounts prior to the wedding. I see withdrawals labeled legal retainer and PR crisis management dating back to October 3 years ago. Ryan says you extorted him. I need to verify the ledger. Meet me at the Wormhole Coffee in Wicker Park. 2 p.m. Alone. She wasn't coming as a fiancée. She was coming as a forensic accountant. She was following the money. I arrived at the Wormhole 15 minutes early. It was a hipster spot full of 80s memorabilia and people typing screenplays on MacBooks. It was neutral ground, far from the Gold Coast country clubs where Ryan held court. I chose a table in the back. I didn't bring a weapon. I brought a manila folder. Amanda walked in at 2 p.m. sharp. She looked tired. The glow I had seen at the park was gone, replaced by the tight-lipped tension of a woman who hasn't slept in days. She wore a trench coat and oversized sunglasses, checking over her shoulder as she entered. She sat down opposite me. She didn't order coffee. "Where is the boy?" she asked immediately. "Ryan says you have him hidden in a basement somewhere." "Noah is at home with his father," I said calmly. "And his father is Lucas." Amanda crossed her arms. "Ryan says Lucas is a cover. He says you were pregnant when you left. He says you stole his heir." I opened the folder. I didn't yell. I didn't get emotional. I slid the first piece of paper across the table. "This is Noah's birth certificate," I said. "Look at the date of birth, then look at the date of conception." Amanda picked it up. Her eyes scanned the numbers. She was an accountant. Math was her language. "Noah was conceived 14 months after I left Ryan," I explained, watching her process the timeline. "Unless Ryan has developed the ability to impregnate women via telepathy from across the city, that child is biologically impossible to be his." Amanda frowned. The math didn't lie. "But he was so sure," he cried, "Stella. He told me he remembered you looking pregnant before you ran away." "I looked pregnant because I had just given birth to a stillborn daughter, Amanda," I said, my voice dropping an octave. I slid the second document across. "These are my discharge papers from the VA hospital. And these," I pointed to the gruesome photos attached to the medical report, "are the x-rays of my ribs from the night I ran away. Blunt force trauma. Fractures consistent with a kick." Amanda stared at the x-rays. Her hand went to her mouth. "He told me you fell. He said you were having a PTSD episode and fell down the stairs." "I lived in a penthouse, Amanda. We had an elevator." She went silent. I could see the wheels turning. The doubt was there, but she needed the nail in the coffin. She needed to see the monster behind the mask. I placed the USB drive on top of the papers. "Mrs. Rodriguez, the neighbor in 4B, sent me this. Her son works in security. He pulled the hallway tapes before Ryan could wipe them." Amanda stared at the black plastic stick. She looked terrified of it. "Why are you giving this to me?" she whispered. "You could go to the police. You could go to TMZ." "I will," I said. "But you're marrying him in 3 days. And despite what you think of me, I don't want another woman to leave that penthouse in a body bag." Amanda reached out. Her fingers were trembling so hard she almost dropped the drive. She pulled a sleek silver laptop out of her bag. She didn't say a word. She plugged it in. She put her noise-canceling headphones on. I sat there and drank my lukewarm tea while I watched her world collapse. It took 30 seconds. I saw the color drain from her face. It happened instantly, like someone had pulled a plug. Her skin went from flush to chalk white. Her eyes widened behind her glasses. She gasped, a sharp intake of air that drew looks from the table next to us. She watched the kick. She watched Victoria screaming. She watched me crawl. She ripped the headphones off. She slammed the laptop shut with a snap that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet cafe. She sat there for a long minute, breathing heavily, her chest heaving. She looked like she was going to be sick. Then, she looked up at me. The hostility was gone. The suspicion was gone. In her eyes, I saw the same look I'd seen in the mirror 3 years ago. The look of a woman who realizes she's been sleeping next to a predator. "He told me he bought that sofa the week after you left," she whispered, her voice shaking. "He said he wanted a fresh start. But he bought it to replace the one you bled on." "Yes," I said. Amanda reached across the table. Her hand was ice cold, but her grip was firm. She squeezed my hand. "I signed a prenup," she said, her voice shifting from fear to a cold, calculating resolve. "It has a fidelity clause and a morality clause. If he commits a crime or causes public scandal, I get everything: the ring, the apartment, the assets." She looked at the USB drive again, then she looked at me. "Can I keep this?" she asked. I nodded. "It's yours." Amanda stood up. She buttoned her coat. She didn't look like a victim anymore. She looked like a forensic accountant who had just found the discrepancy that would bankrupt the CEO. "I'm sorry I believed him," she said, her voice hard as diamond. "And thank you, Stella. I think I know exactly how to use this." She walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. I watched her go. I took a sip of my tea. It tasted like victory. The wedding was in 3 days. Ryan thought he was getting a trophy wife. He had no idea he was walking down the aisle toward his own execution. We didn't go to the wedding. We didn't need to be there to watch the execution. It was a Saturday evening. Lucas and I were sitting on our second-hand, lovingly restored velvet couch in our small apartment. Noah was asleep in the other room. On the coffee table, my laptop was open, casting a blue glow over our faces. Amanda had sent me a link that morning. "Live stream," the subject line read. "Front row seat." The feed was high definition. It showed the ballroom of the Oakwood Country Club, a place I hadn't set foot in since the night I was thrown out. It was disgusting in its opulence. There were white orchids cascading from the ceiling like waterfalls. There was a string quartet playing Vivaldi. And there were 300 of Chicago's elite, sipping champagne and waiting to crown the prince and princess of the Gold Coast. The camera panned across the front row. I saw Victoria. She was wearing a silver gown that looked like armor. She was holding court, leaning in to whisper to the wife of a senator. The microphone on the camera picked up her voice clearly. "Oh, Amanda is a dream," Victoria was saying, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Such good stock. Not like that peasant Ryan married before. This one knows her place. She'll give us a proper heir." Lucas squeezed my hand so hard his knuckles turned white. "Just wait," I whispered. "Just wait." Then the music swelled. The doors opened. Ryan stood at the altar. He looked like a GQ cover. His tuxedo was tailored to the millimeter. He was smiling, rocking back on his heels, radiating the arrogance of a man who thinks he has won the lottery of life. Amanda walked down the aisle. She didn't look like a blushing bride. She looked like a marble statue. Her face was composed, her eyes locked on Ryan. She wasn't smiling. When she reached the altar, the priest began the ceremony. It was the standard script: love, honor, cherish. Ryan said his vows first. He didn't use the traditional ones. Of course not. He had written his own. "Amanda," he said, his voice smooth as silk, projected to the back of the room. "I promise to give you the world you deserve. I promise to be the man who protects you, provides for you, and leads our family into a legacy of greatness. I chose you because you match my excellence. Me, me, me." Even his vows were a love letter to himself. Then it was Amanda's turn. The priest nodded at her. "Amanda, do you have your vows?" Amanda reached into the bodice of her dress, but she didn't pull out a piece of paper. She pulled out a microphone. She had grabbed the handheld one from the stand. She turned to face the audience first, then turned back to Ryan. "Ryan," she said. Her voice wasn't shaking. It was clear, cold, and amplified by the speakers in every corner of the ballroom. "You told me you loved me because I was smart. You said you wanted a wife who pays attention to the details." Ryan's smile faltered slightly. He looked confused. "Babe, What are you doing? I'm paying attention to the details, Ryan, she continued. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. You promised to protect me, but I was curious about how you protected your last wife. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Victoria stood up halfway in her seat. Amanda, Ryan hissed, stepping forward. Put the phone away. You're hysterical. I'm not hysterical, she said. I'm reading. She held the phone up. October 12th, 10:45 p.m. This is a text message sent from Ryan Drake's phone to his wife, Stella, 20 minutes after she suffered a stillbirth. The room went dead silent. Even the waiters stopped moving. Amanda read the words. She enunciated every syllable. You ruined my sofa. You bleed on everything you touch. Do the world a favor and disappear. Don't come back. Ryan's face went pale. That's a lie. She hacked my phone. This is... And just so we're clear on the context, Amanda interrupted, her voice rising over his. I thought you all should see why she was bleeding. She pointed a remote control at the massive projector screen behind the altar. It was meant to display a montage of their love story photos. Instead, the screen flickered to life with a grainy, black-and-white video. I watched on my laptop as 300 people simultaneously gasped. The video played in silence, which made it worse. On the screen, giant-sized, Ryan Drake grabbed a woman by the hair. He dragged her across the marble floor. And then, as she tried to stand, clutching her stomach, he kicked her. It wasn't a shove. It was a punt. A violent, hate-filled kick to the ribs of a woman who had just lost a child. On the screen, Victoria was there too, screaming, pointing, doing nothing to stop it. In the ballroom, chaos erupted. Oh my God, someone screamed. Is that Stella? He kicked her. Victoria collapsed into her chair, clutching her chest, but nobody rushed to help her. They were too busy staring at the monster at the altar. Ryan stood frozen. He looked at the screen, then at the crowd. The mask was gone. He looked small. He looked naked. It's out of context, he yelled, his voice cracking. She was attacking me. She was crazy. Amanda stepped closer to him. The video played on a loop behind her. The kick, the fall, the kick, the fall. You are a disease, Ryan, she said into the microphone, and I am the cure. She looked down at her hand. She slid off the 5-carat engagement ring he had bought with money he probably hid from the IRS. I would rather live alone for the rest of my life, she said, than spend one more second breathing the same air as a monster. She threw the ring. It didn't hit his face. It hit him square in the chest. It bounced off his tuxedo lapel and clattered onto the hardwood floor. Clink, clink, clink. The sound echoed in the silence. Amanda dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a deafening thud of feedback. She turned around, lifted the hem of her expensive dress, and walked back down the aisle. She walked past the horrified guests. She walked past the fainting mother-in-law. She walked past the cameras. Ryan was left standing at the altar, alone. The video was still playing behind him, the loop of his cruelty repeating over and over again, broadcasting his soul to the people he wanted to impress the most. He looked at the crowd, pleading for an ally. She's lying. It's a setup. But nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The judgment was absolute. I closed my laptop. I sat back against the velvet couch and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 3 years. The tears that rolled down my cheeks weren't sad. They were cleansing. Lucas put his arm around me and kissed my forehead. It's over, Stella, he whispered. The world knows. Ryan Drake wanted a show. He wanted a spectacle. Well, he got one. He got the wedding of the century. And it was also his funeral. They say that when a skyscraper collapses, it doesn't make a sound at first. There's just a shudder, a groan of steel giving way, and then the whole structure comes down in a cloud of dust. Watching Ryan's life disintegrate after the wedding was exactly like that. It didn't happen all at once. It happened in a slow, agonizing cascade. The domino effect, Lucas called it. First, it was the social death. In the Gold Coast, reputation is currency, and Ryan was suddenly bankrupt. The video of him kicking me didn't just stay in that ballroom. It went viral. It was everywhere: Twitter, TikTok, the local news. He became a meme. He became the face of domestic abuse. The country club revoked his membership within 24 hours, citing a violation of moral conduct. The friends who used to drink his scotch and laugh at his jokes suddenly blocked his number. He was persona non grata in the only world that mattered to him. Then came the financial ruin. The board of directors at his real estate firm didn't care about his personal life until it started hurting the bottom line. When investors started pulling out, terrified of the bad PR, the board held an emergency meeting. They didn't just fire him, they triggered the morality clause in his contract to deny him a severance package. He was escorted out of the building by security, the same security team he used to scream at. And Victoria? That was the most tragic part of the collapse. Without Ryan's income, the penthouse was foreclosed on. The private nurses, the drivers, the organic meal delivery services, they all vanished. Ryan couldn't take her in. He was sleeping on a friend's couch in a studio apartment in Uptown. Last I heard, Victoria was placed in a state-subsidized nursing home on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't the kind with chandeliers and bridge clubs. It was the kind with fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, and the smell of bleach and boiled cabbage. Because she had spent her life being cruel to everyone around her, she had no visitors. She was the Queen of Chicago, now ruling over a kingdom of beige walls and silence. 3 years passed. The dust settled. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, while I was folding laundry, my phone rang. It was a number I recognized but hadn't seen in years. Claire, Ryan's older sister. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I had every right to ignore her. Claire had been there during the insults. She had been there when Ryan made fun of my clothes, my background, my trauma. She had never joined in, but she had never stopped him. She was the silent witness, the enabler. I took a breath and answered. Hello, Claire. Stella? Her voice was wet, thick with tears. I didn't think you'd pick up. What do you want, Claire? I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she sobbed. I saw Ryan yesterday. He looked awful, Stella. He's drinking again. He blames you for everything. But seeing him like that, it made me realize how much we failed you. I should have stood up for you. I was scared of him, but that's no excuse. I'm so sorry. I listened to her cry. A part of me, the old Stella, wanted to comfort her, wanted to say, it's okay, family is complicated. But the new Stella, the one who had rebuilt herself from ash, knew better. Thank you for the apology, Claire, I said, my voice steady and calm. I accept it. I forgive you. Really? She breathed, sounding hopeful. Maybe we could get coffee. I'd love to see Noah. I'd love to be an aunt. No, I cut her off gently. I forgive you, Claire, because I need to let go of the anger for my own peace. But I am not inviting you back into my life. You watched me bleed and said nothing. I can't have that energy around my son. I wish you well, but please don't call this number again. There was a long silence. Then, a quiet, resigned, I understand. Goodbye, Stella. I hung up. I didn't feel guilty. I felt lighter. That was the power of boundaries. They weren't walls to keep people out. They were fences to keep my peace in. A few months later, my lawyer called. He wanted to revisit the idea of a civil suit against Ryan for the assault. We have the video, Stella, he said. We could nail him. We could get a judgment. Maybe even jail time if we push for criminal charges reopening. I looked out the window of our small, cozy house. I thought about Ryan. I thought about him sitting in a dive bar somewhere, telling anyone who would listen that his crazy ex-wife ruined his life. I thought about him checking his bank account and seeing single digits. I thought about the way people looked at him on the street, not with fear, but with disgust. No, I told the lawyer. Stella, are you sure? He deserves to pay. He's paying, I said. For a narcissist like Ryan, prison isn't the worst punishment. Attention is oxygen to him, even negative attention. If I put him on trial, he gets an audience, he gets to be the victim again. The worst thing I can do to Ryan Drake is to be happy. The worst punishment is for him to be irrelevant. I want him to be forgotten. I hung up the phone. I was done with courts. I was done with fighting. The war was over. I walked out to the garage, which Lucas had converted into a full workshop. The smell hit me first. The rich, earthy scent of cedar and sawdust. It was the smell of creation. Lucas was standing at his workbench. He was wearing his safety goggles, and next to him, standing on a sturdy stool, was Noah. Noah was 4 years old now. He was wearing a miniature tool belt that Lucas had made for him. He was holding a small plastic hammer, his face scrunched up in intense concentration as he tried to hit a wooden peg into a pre-drilled hole. "Easy, buddy," Lucas murmured, his hand guiding Noah's small arm. "Don't rush it. Feel the wood. Let the hammer do the work." Noah tapped the peg. Thwack! It went in straight. "I did it," Noah cheered, throwing his arms up. "Daddy, look, I built it." "You sure did," Lucas beamed, lifting Noah up and swinging him around. "You're a natural builder, just like your old man." I leaned against the doorframe, watching them. 3 years ago, I was lying in the snow, thinking my life was over. I thought I was broken beyond repair. I thought I would never be a mother, never be loved, never be safe. But looking at them, my husband, strong and kind, my son, happy and whole, I realized the truth. Ryan had tried to break me, but all he did was clear the site so I could build something better. Lucas looked up and saw me. He smiled, that warm, easy smile that still made my knees weak. "Hey, beautiful. We're making a treasure box. Noah says he needs a place to keep his cool rocks." "It looks perfect," I said, walking over to join them. I kissed Lucas. I kissed the top of Noah's head. I didn't need a penthouse. I didn't need a white leather sofa. I had a treasure box full of rocks, a workshop full of sawdust, and a heart full of peace. And that was a victory sweeter than any revenge. 3 years is a lifetime. In 3 years, your cells regenerate, your hair grows out, and the sharp edges of a jagged memory finally start to smooth down into something you can hold without bleeding. I was standing in the produce aisle of Whole Foods in Lincoln Park, debating between organic kale and spinach, when a cart bumped gently into mine. "Oh, excuse me, I wasn't looking where I was." The voice stopped. I looked up. Standing there, wearing yoga pants and a messy bun, holding a carton of oat milk, was Amanda. But she didn't look like the terrified, couture-wearing statue I'd seen walking down the aisle at the country club. She looked real. There were laugh lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She looked tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from living, not from hiding. And she wasn't alone. Strapped into the seat of her cart was a toddler, a little girl with curly hair and bright, curious eyes munching on a cracker. "Stella?" Amanda breathed, her eyes widening. I smiled. It came easily now. "Hi, Amanda." She let out a breath and abandoned her cart to hug me. It wasn't a polite, socialite air kiss. It was a squeeze of genuine affection. When she pulled back, she looked down at the little girl. "Stella, I want you to meet Sophie," Amanda said, her voice soft with pride. "I adopted her last year. The process was long, and being a single mom is, well, it's chaos. But it's my chaos." "She's beautiful," I said, waving at Sophie, who hid her face behind a cracker. "She saved me," Amanda whispered, looking at me with an intensity that cut through the noise of the grocery store. "But you saved me first. If you hadn't walked into that coffee shop, if you hadn't given me that USB drive, I would be trapped in that penthouse right now. I would be hollow." "You saved yourself, Amanda," I corrected her. "I just gave you the flashlight. You were the one brave enough to walk out of the dark." We talked for 20 minutes, blocking the aisle, ignoring the annoyed looks from other shoppers. We talked about preschools and pediatricians. We didn't talk about Ryan. He was a ghost story we had both finished reading. When we parted ways, she promised to call. And for the first time in history, I knew she meant it. I drove home with my kale, thinking about how strange life is. The woman who was supposed to be my replacement had become my friend. We were two soldiers from opposing sides of a war that neither of us started, finding peace in the aftermath. When I got home, the house was buzzing with activity. Our dining room table was covered in boxes. Lucas was there, taping them shut. Inside each box was what we called a first night kit: toothbrush, toothpaste, warm socks, a prepaid phone card, a list of pro bono lawyers, and a teddy bear. "How's the inventory looking?" I asked, kissing Lucas on the cheek. He smelled like cedar and cardboard. "We're 10 kits ahead of schedule," he said. "The shelter on the south side called. They have 3 new families coming in tonight. They need these." This was the Emma Foundation. We didn't have millions of dollars. We didn't host galas with $10,000 plates. We used a portion of Lucas's profits from the carpentry business and my salary from the library. It was small, grassroots, and quiet. But every box we sent out was a message to a woman somewhere in Chicago who was terrified and alone. It was a message that said, "You matter. You are not garbage. Keep going." "Daddy, Mommy." The back door flew open, and Noah burst in. He was 4 now, a whirlwind of energy and dirt. But today, he was crying. I dropped my purse and ran to him. "Noah, what happened?" There was a nasty scrape on his cheek, and his jeans were torn at the knee. "I got in a fight," he sniffled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Lucas knelt down, his face serious. "You know the rule, Noah. We don't use hands to hurt. We use hands to build." "I know," Noah protested, his chin trembling. "But Tommy..." He was pushing Sarah off the slide. He called her names and made her cry. I told him to stop, and he pushed me. So I pushed him back so Sarah could get away. Lucas and I exchanged a look. I pulled Noah onto my lap, grabbing the first aid kit. As I cleaned his scrape, I looked into his eyes that were so much like his father's. "Noah, look at me," I said softly. He looked up, tears still clinging to his lashes. "You did the right thing," I told him. "I did." "Yes. There is a difference between being a bully and being a protector," I said, smoothing his hair. "A bully uses strength to make people feel small. A protector uses strength to keep people safe. Today, you were a protector. You were a shield for Sarah." "Like a knight?" Noah asked, perking up. "Better than a knight," Lucas added, wrapping his large arms around both of us. "You were a good man." That night, a blizzard rolled into Chicago. It was fitting. The story had started with a blizzard 3 years ago. Back then, the snow had been an enemy. It had been the cold, white blanket that threatened to freeze me to death on the sidewalk. But tonight, inside our small, sturdy house, the snow was just scenery. I sat in the living room after the boys had gone to sleep. I was sitting in the oak chair, the one with the butterfly key repair that Lucas had fixed the day we met. It was my favorite spot in the world. I held a mug of hot lavender tea in my hands, letting the steam warm my face. Outside the window, the wind howled, whipping the snow into a frenzy against the glass. But inside, the fire was crackling. The house settled with creaks and groans that sounded like a lullaby. I thought about the scar on my ribs. It was still there, a faint silver line. It used to ache when it rained. Now, it only reminded me of what I could survive. I thought about Brené Brown, whose books I had devoured during my recovery. She wrote, "We can't choose what happens to us, but we can choose how to write the ending." Ryan chose his ending. He chose bitterness, ego, and isolation. And I chose mine. I took a sip of the tea. It was sweet, warm, and comforting. I wasn't the girl who bled on the white sofa anymore. I wasn't even the soldier who fought in the desert. I was Stella. I was a wife, a mother, a friend, and a builder. I looked at the reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back wasn't haunted. She was whole. The storm raged on outside, burying the city in white. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the cold. I'd built my own fire, and it was going to burn for a long, long time. Thank you for walking through the storm with me. My story ends here, but I know for many of you, the fight is still going on. If you are currently sitting in the dark, wondering if the sun will ever rise again, please listen to me. You are not broken. You are just under construction. If my journey gave you a spark of hope today, please honor it by hitting the subscribe button and sharing this story with someone who needs to be reminded of their strength. Let's build a family right here in the comments. You are never alone. Stay warm.